Hello, everyone. It's me, Andrew. I'm here in my home in lovely Ligonier, Pennsylvania. Hopefully, y'all are doing well out there and that you're having a great Wednesday. We've had an eventful day so far, and it's our second day of our reset kind of week, and it's going by way too quick. So we may tackle on a day at the end. I don't know. We're gonna have to kind of look at what we can do. Um, but Miss Idabelle, she went in for her to get spayed this morning. So we got up super early and took her to the vet. Everything seemed to go pretty well. She's a little bit more nervous than Gertie when we were taking her in the car. And so she was a little bit more nervous. I don't think she likes the carrier too much. But yes, she's like Gertie, she just kind of chills out and kind of relaxes. And Idabelle, she kind of is freaking out. So I can't stay on too long because I have to kind of monitor her and make sure that she doesn't bust any stitches and you know is stays as healthy as possible. So yes, we've had a busy day. This after we dropped Idabelle off, we ended up going back to the cottage and moving some furniture around. William stayed up pretty late last night working on packages. I stayed up late painting those hearts that I showed yesterday. I'm still going to work on that. And hopefully, when our kind of moratorium on sales is over, I'll put those up for folks to get, hopefully. I see Marianne's watching. Howdy, Marianne. Let's see who else is watching. Wednesday is usually a slow day for us in general. William is at his pottery class right now. Trace is watching. Howdy. Um, so usually Williams at his last week, William skipped his pottery class because we didn't really know how it would all go with Gertie. Um, so it went pretty well last time with Gertie. So he decided to go to his class, and I'm just going to do a really quick tutorial on circular brick stitch. If you've tuned in before, you may have seen me do this demo before. I'm working on a sculpture right now where I need to make lots and lots of circular brick stitch pieces. So I thought it would be good to show that so that not only do I show like a tutorial, but also I make something for the project that I'm working on. Beading with Nicole B says hello, howdy. Hopefully you're doing well. Yeah, so we've it's been a busy day here working at the cottage. I think some of our plans are going to get scaled back pretty drastically because we have this idea that we would do all these things this week, and unfortunately, that's just not going to happen. So we are going to do we are going to focus our energy on the website and on getting all the packages out and kind of getting to a level zero ground with that as much as we can, and then go from there. So if you're wondering what I'm talking about, we're doing a reset week. And so this week, we are not doing any live sales. We're not, our online stores closed, and our D-Stash closed last night. So if you are in our D-Stash group and you're like, oh, I wish I could have got that, you probably can squeeze that in and because we're doing a trunk show with Laura Lunsford, and those items are up in the D-Stash group right now. And I don't want people to miss out on getting those if they really wanted them, because we're not doing any sales right now. So I don't want people to miss out on those. So if you're in the D-Stash group, um, head on over there and claim it, and you still probably can squeeze it in, even though technically we cut it off. I don't know if William deleted the post yet. Probably not. So you may still be able to squeeze one in. Just make sure to tag either me or William so that we see it. Let's see who else is watching. Beading with Nicole B says, I need to learn how to do bead weaving one technique at a time. So I'm here. Oh, good. Yeah, this is a super easy technique. I really like brick stitch. It's something that once you get going, you don't really have to think about it too much. So I really appreciate that. For some of the projects that I do with bead weaving, you have to count a lot, and you have to figure out the pattern, and you have to really focus on the pattern. And sometimes that can be less than ideal. So I'm going to show you on a much bigger scale today. And the reason why is because, for one, I need them. And number two, it's easier to see. So we'll jump in pretty soon. Julie says, I love brick stitch too. Yeah, so normally when people learn brick stitch, they learn either flat brick stitch, or they learn to do brick stitch on a form. What I'm going to do today is to do circular brick stitch, and there's no form, and we just kind of go from there. So that's what we're going to do today. I don't know how many people, I don't see a lot of people using circular brick stitch in their work, but I really enjoy it, and it's one of the ways that I work on my sculptures. I don't know if you all saw some of them. Like, this is an example of one of the sculptures, and people are like, how did you get, this is all beaded. This is not glued on. There's a couple different artists out there, and they kind of like use, I can't remember the name. It starts with the A. Auntie's glue, Auntie Annie's glue. They use some kind of soft tack glue, and they glue their pieces in. And this is all stitched. So you can kind of see it here, like this round part. And this part right here, this is all circular brick stitch. So I'm working on a new sculpture. Hopefully they'll finish. I don't know if I am going to be able to do it or not. But I'm going to certainly try. The plan was to sit with Idabel while she's kind of zonked out, but she hasn't zonked out. So she's trying to spill the beads, and I'm like getting a little bit frazzled. So I haven't been able to make as many brick stitch components as I wanted. Julie says, you have such a broad set of skills, Andrew. Oh, thanks. Beading with Nicole says, oh, wow. Thanks. Yeah, I kind of love to do a little bit of everything. I know that for me, sometimes that seems, sometimes like if you're trying to like build a career, sometimes that's not the best thing to do. I kind of feel like people who are like obsessed myopically with one thing, they're usually a little bit quicker to establish themselves. But for me, I get so bored. So I like to have a lot of different things going on. It keeps me kind of entertained. And I also think that by working with other mediums or other techniques, that inform some of the other things I'm working on. So like when I'm doing blacksmithing, I'm working with metal on a much larger scale, so I can actually see how the metal moves. Um, sometimes when it's on a very small scale, you can't actually see it happening. You just see the results of it. But when I'm blacksmithing, I actually see it in progress, and I can actually understand how the metal is moving a little bit easier. So that's an example of how that is. And then for my beading, I've tried to kind of incorporate my bead work with my sculptural work. And I don't know, we'll see. So let's see. Suzanne is watching. Howdy. Beading with Nicole says Eileen's glue. That's the one. It's in a gold and purple bottle. Not to be dishing all their secrets, but I zoomed in real close on one of their videos while they were working. I was like, oh, Julie says, same here. I love to do all kinds of things and learn new things all the time. I think it's good for you. I think it's good to keep things interesting. And as a maker, I like when other makers do that. I like to see kind of that the whole web of their creativity and not just like a segment of it. So, so I always try to show whatever I'm up to because I know that, you know, I find it interesting when I see other people doing it. So I can only imagine that other people would find it interesting if they see me doing it. Lorraine says, sounds interesting. I've never seen circular brick stitching. It's pretty easy once you get going. I always say that whenever you're starting a seed bead project with bead weaving, the first kind of like getting it going, you got to have a lot of faith and you just got to stick to it because it'll look like a piece of chewed up bubble gum until you get kind of further along. And then as the pattern grows and as the tension grows, it kind of evens itself out. But always getting started, you got to have that faith because otherwise it can look a mess. And people get discouraged. Sometimes I find that people sometimes when they're starting and it looks all wonkadoodle, people get discouraged and then they give up. So don't give up, persevere. And, if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. Suzanne says, glad Idabelle is feeling well. Yeah, she's feeling almost too good. So she keeps trying to jump on stuff. And it's fraying my nerves because I have to I don't want her to bust her stitches or pop the glue. So and right now she's on pretty heavy painkiller or like anesthesia for the surgery. So she's not feeling it right now, but like tomorrow, I don't want her to get like thunderstruck. So yeah. Marion says, yep, gold and purple. All right, so I'm going to flip this around and we're just gonna get started. How about it? All right. So hopefully y'all are doing well out there. Let's see. Back ultra wide camera. All right. So today for this sculpture that I'm working on, I need this to be very sturdy. So I'm going to be using 8-pound Fireline. This is in the smoke color. And I like this kind of weight for these bigger beads. So I'm going to be using some Japanese. These are actually 5-0s, which they're vintage Japanese beads. I'm going to be working in red and white. And you'll see what I'm doing in a second as I work. I'm going to have something to cut my fire line, and I'm going to have a needle. And those are the tools that I'm going to be using for this circular brick stitch. All right, I'm going to talk you through the circular brick stitch first, and then we will jump into it. So I know sometimes it's better to see things kind of drawn out and illustrated. So how many of you have done brick stitch before? Let me know in the comments and we'll go from there. Teresa says, one of my daughters has a birthday on Friday, so hoping to make her something. Oh, awesome. All right, so here's this. I'm going to run downstairs for a second and get you a sample of something. Suzanne says, some brick stitch. Beading with Nicole said, never tried any weaving. Lorraine says, I have. Linus says, I've tried. Need to try harder. This is a relatively easy stitch, and it's one of my favorites. All right, so I'm going to show you. I'm going to talk you through kind of regular brick stitch real quick, and then we'll go into circular brick stitch. All right. So when you're doing regular brick stitch, you start with ladder stitch. So ladder stitch is where you put the beads and the holes are going like this. And you start by weaving them in side by side. All right, so you form your first thread bridge and that goes through there. You tie it off and this will come in here like this. And so you've got these thread bridges. Now these thread bridges are over exaggerated, so don't get nervous because you're like, is your thread supposed to look like this? And that's a no, it will be tight. But you're going in this direction and you're tying this in. And once you get them on, this will come up. And then you may go like this. And once you come around, you'll go like that. All right. So these are your base for regular brick stitch. Eventually your thread will come up here. Whenever you start a new row, you start with 2 beads usually. And what that means is if you're working on a decrease, then you'll only use 1. But generally speaking, you will use 2. So this thread will go underneath this thread bridge right here and go up through this bead here. So this one will go and it will live like this and you'll go up through it. All right. And then whenever you add on a new bead, it'll come down underneath that thread bridge and up through that. So you'll add your bead, it'll go down through underneath that thread bridge and up through that. And when you actually see that being demonstrated, it looks a lot easier. So this is a basic brick stitch. And basically what happens is it forms a pattern like this. And then the beads will look like this. And that's why they call it brick stitch, is because they line up kind of like a brick where they go in between the two previous on the previous row. All right. So that's regular brick stitch. When we're doing circular brick stitch, we're going to start with ladder stitch with 3 beads. And then I'll show you how we curl that over. And then you build on top of that like so. All right. Beading with Nicole says, looks like brick pavers. Exactly so. All right. And Julie says, I have done quite a bit. Oh, good. Marianne says, not me. I saw a previous demo on it, but haven't actually done it. It's really easy once you get going. And this looks harder than it is. It's actually really easy. I will deposit that in the garbage. And then, I'll show you the other piece that I did later. I was going to run down and get it now, but I think I'm going to do that later. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off a wingspan. Actually, I'm going to cut off a little more than a wingspan. So people are like, oh, well, I don't have wings. Humans don't have wings. Why do you call it that? And that's the term that the sewers came up with. So I didn't make up it. So that's just what they call it. So what that means is it's one full length of your arm and one length of your torso. And the reason why they call it that, um, you can work on longer lengths than that, but I find that it is easier to make knots with that. If it's too long, I like to work with a wingspan of thread because you get it gets tangled less. All right. So I'm measuring out a wingspan. I'm going to give myself a few more inches on top of that. And then I'm going to cut this off. Now you may want to use a finer thread depending on your bead size. So if you have little delicas or little tiny size 11 O's, you're not going to want to use this great big thread, because if you use this great big thread, it's going to bust your beads, because you'll be forcing too much material through the hole size and your beads will break. So keep that in mind. Don't be trying to squeeze in these in the 15O. If you want to work with smaller beads, work with a smaller thread size and preferably a smaller needle size. And this is a size 11 needle and beading needle, so it's a little bit longer. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, I've got my two colors here, and I'm going to take 2 beads and string this onto my needle, like so. I'm going to walk this down almost to the very end of my thread. Now, one thing that you kind of have to be mindful of is these vintage seed beads that I've got, they've got a matte surface, and I'm working with a dyed thread. The smoke is a dyed thread. So what happens with that is it can come off on the beads. What I do to clean that up after is sometimes we'll take like a little like a wet wipe or a baby wipe and just gently go over it if it's like super uh gnarly. And sometimes that can happen, especially with the white matte beads. All right. I see Trace is watching. Howdy. All right. So I've got the 2 beads, and I'm gonna give myself about 4-inch tail or so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the end of the thread, and I'm going to make a square knot. So I'm going to go over once and see what's happening. They're sitting side by side. And I'm going to come over here again. I'm going to go under that thread and then go under it again. And then I'm going to pull nice and tight, but making sure that I have the knot on the same side. Because if I do the knot on the other side, it's going to cause a problem. I don't want this to be too tight, but I also don't want this to be too loose. So that's always a thing with beadwork, is getting the tension just right. So now that you have these sitting side by side like so, I'm going to take my needle and run it up through one of the beads. It doesn't really matter which one. And then I'm going to pick up another red size 5/0 Japanese seed bead. And since I'm coming out through the top here, I'm going to go up through the bottom. All right. And that is also going to sit side by side like so. Since this is coming up here, I don't want this to be in the middle of it. I'm going to go down through this bead at the end. All right. So this is how it looks now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently fold this. I'm going to try to keep that tail out of the way. And what I'm going to do is the thread is coming out of the bottom here. And I'm going to go through this bead here, the first bead in that sequence. All right. And that's going to help keep them kind of in this shape. All right. So the next thing I want to do is there's no thread bridge on this side. So the thread's coming out of here. I'm going to go back around here like so. And I'm going to go through that. So it's going to make a little thing, a little kind of pyramid-y shape like that. All right. I want to make sure that the thread bridge is on the outside of the beads, because if it goes underneath, it makes it harder. So I just want to make sure that the thread bridge is on the sides and not underneath. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go underneath this thread bridge and do a half hitch knot. I call these anchor knots, and this just secures the thread so it doesn't move around while you're trying to work. All right, so this is what we made. So ladder stitch, 3 beads in a ladder stitch, and then fold the ladder in half, and then tie the 2 ends together and put a bridge on the outside. If it does move, you can always move it back, but that is one of those things that you kind of have to train the thread to do it. All right, so I'm coming out through that hole. Whenever I start a new row, I add 2 beads. I picked up 2 beads, and I'm going to go underneath this thread bridge right here. See that? All right. And I'm going to go up through the last bead that I added. All right. And I'm going to gently tug to make sure that they're nice and flushly sitting against that. So right now it looks like nothing, but you'll see with a little bit of, as I keep adding beads, you'll start to see the pattern. I'm going to pick up 1 bead. I'm going to go underneath the nearest thread bridge. So I have to make a choice, either this one or this one. I'm going to go for this one. And you kind of have to lead with your heart on this one, and put it wherever it will fit. Okay, I went underneath that thread bridge, so I'm going to go up through that bead that I just added, and I've got this like so. All right, so here is where stuff starts to turn. And I'm going to pick up a bead, and you're going to notice my fingers look like I've been working in the coal mine, and that's because of the dye on the thread. So I picked up a bead. I'm going to go underneath the thread bridge and then up through the bead that I just added. All right. So I'm going to pick up a bead, go underneath the thread bridge, and up through the bead that I just added. All right. And this, it kind of moves. So I'm going to kind of coax that back into position. See where that thread bridge moved a little bit? I'm going to just gently move that back into position. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a bead. Go underneath the nearest thread bridge in my circular pattern, and then go up through that bead. All right. When you start to get closer to the end of the row, you have a couple different choices. And the choices include how, if there's enough room or not to add more beads. So there's enough room, and I'm going to put one bead. I'm going to go underneath the thread bridge and up through the bead. And then we'll look. Sometimes it is tempting to put another bead in this little space here, but that can change the shape of your circle. So what you're going to do is you're going to push these together like so. And since I'm coming out through the top here, I'm going to go down through the top of the first bead in that row, down through the bottom, and then I'm going to jump back up to the last bead in that row and go up from the bottom through the top. And that's going to complete that row. I'm going to cinch it slightly, make sure that it's nice and taut. And then what I'm going to do is, it doesn't really look like much, does it? But what happens is that as the tension kind of increases and pulls and you get it from different directions, it'll kind of smooth out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my needle and go underneath that thread bridge and then go up through this loop. They call that the half hitch knot. And the reason why is I don't want this to be all wavy gravy when I'm working. All right, so I'm going to jump into the next row. Remember, whenever we add a new row, we start with 2 beads. So I'm picking up 2 of these white beads. I'm going to go underneath the nearest thread bridge. And see, it's kind of sticking up like that. I'm going to gently move that so that they're flush against the circular core that I'm creating. I'm going to go up through the bead that is the last that I added. And then I'm going to continue around. So at this point, you get the picture. It is pick up a bead, go underneath the thread bridge, then go up through the bead and continue until you reach the whole way around. And it goes pretty quick, which is what I like about this. I'm working with exceptionally large beads right now, and you can make relatively quick pieces using that. The issue with this is that you will be able to see the thread bridges. If you work with smaller beads, you won't see the thread as much. With this, you kind of see it. And I think that's part of the stitch, and it's kind of the look. So you kind of have to roll with it or pick a different stitch. All right, that is how to do that. Now, say you, I'm going to continue going around until I finish, and then we'll just do another demo on how to add more beads, another row or so. This is really simple. And once I get to a point, I'll stop and show you how to end your piece. And I don't know if I'm gonna need to, I don't know if I'm gonna need to add thread, but that's something that I can show you as well if we get to a point where we need to add thread. All right, that's easy, huh? And when I'm working, I'm holding my beads with my thumb and forefinger. That's not the best for teaching. You can't really see through my fingers. However, I'm holding this work stable so that it's not getting super loose and it's not like moving around. I find that if you don't kind of hold it, what can happen is it can get kind of loose and the tension will get off, and you won't have as clean of rows. And then your circular brick stitch is more like amoeba shaped as opposed to circular shaped. And it's kind of because they are larger beads, you're not getting like a perfect circle. But yeah. So I'm reached the end of my row here. I can't fit any more beads in between. So what I'm going to do is, this is coming out through the top. I'm going to go down through the top on the first bead in the third row, and then up through the last bead in the third row. And because I haven't gotten there quite yet to the tension that I want, I'm going to kind of create another half hitch knot and make sure that I kind of pull that so that the knot goes into the hole of the bead. So that's circular brick stitch. All right, so I'm gonna start. You all remember what to do when you start. You pick up 2 beads. All right, I'm going to go underneath the thread bridge and then up through the last bead that I just added. And then I'm going to continue going around. So hopefully y'all have been doing well, and that y'all have been, what have y'all been up to? Have you been making stuff? We've been working, I've been working on those hearts, like I said in the beginning. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I made some protected heart ornaments out of polymer clay. If you're on the Patreon, I go step by step on how I made those. And then yesterday during the live, I talked about how you can paint polymer clay. So, yeah. So I worked on that last night when we were fixing supper. And William worked on packing, and we had pizza, which was good. It hit the spot. I don't know what we're gonna have tonight. We'll see. Now, one thing you do have to be mindful of, and it will happen less if you are not on camera. I find that when I'm holding my work, I'm holding it at such an odd kind of angle. And that's not awesome all the time, especially for your posture. But so I want you all to be able to see the work, so I'm kind of holding it out and away from myself, and that can kind of lead to things getting kind of tangled up. So just be gentle with yourself. Teresa says, making jewelry, I'm filling orders for our C-Glass company. Beading with Nicole says, I've been trying to focus on my channel and learning how to be more consistent with doing content. We're also kind of in that boat. We had a teacher that worked with us, Jen Tuchon, and she did most of our long format content for us. That we would have, like, it was called Saturday morning tutorials, and she did those for us, and that was awesome. But she ended up getting a different job, and so hasn't been able to do that. And we've just been so busy just trying to keep everything afloat that it's been hard for us to film and edit videos. So I just do the lives. We just have been focusing on the live events because that's where we make the most of our sales. It's kind of a catch-22 because we know that people find us through those long format videos, like new people. So it is beneficial for us to do those. However, we kind of have to just kind of survive. So we've just been focusing on our live sales, and those don't count the same way that long format videos that are pre-recorded do. So, like we do a live every weekday, generally speaking, and we do that. Uh, we've been doing that for years at this point, and it doesn't count. It doesn't count the same way. So that's a shame, but I get it. They have a very specific things that they're looking for, and they're trying to encourage YouTube to become basically a search engine, and so they want things that answer questions. So that's one of those things that hopefully, now that we're in the reset week, if we get all caught up, that's something that we can give a little bit more time. I think sometimes with the shipping, it gets a little bit overwhelming for William, because there are so many moving parts, and we also offer combined shipping for things. So it is a kind of a puzzle, and it takes a little bit more brain power to do than just sticking stuff in a box. So I think for him, it becomes a little bit daunting, and he does it, but it doesn't come easily. And so when it doesn't come easily, it's like if you put a box in front of a door, like a cabinet door, you're less likely to open that cabinet. It's just, I think about it in kind of an energetic way. So it's kind of blocking the energy from moving and flowing. Um, but from a very practical reason, people, they don't, they don't want to have to like move the boxes. So for us, this reset week is all about kind of moving the boxes in our way, both physically and kind of mentally, and clearing the decks so that we can kind of have a little bit of breathing room. And once we have a little bit more breathing room, then we can start working on developing more content in different formats. I've really been spending a lot of time working on developing my Instagram, and over the past couple years, and that's really helped. I work with a business coach for that. Her name is Josie Lewis, and she specializes in working with artists and with Instagram. So I have found a lot of benefit from doing her program. However, I will say that I'm not the best at it because I am super busy, and working with this kind of like transitions and stuff don't really come easy to me. So like people who like are used to like TikTok and things like that, where they kind of have those transitions built in and stuff. I kind of feel like it doesn't come easy to me, so I don't necessarily do it as often as I probably should. And so I'm kind of, I don't take all the advice that she gives, and I know that if I did put more energy and time into it, the way that she says to do it, then my numbers will grow and my reach will expand. Because the things that I have done that she's recommended have helped tremendously. Because I had kind of stagnated at like 2,000 followers for a solid year, and I was posting content and doing hashtags and all kinds of stuff. And I thought that I was doing all the right things, and I could not figure it out. And once I made a few changes, I ended up growing over 1,000 followers. So For me, that's pretty big. I know some folks, they have like millions of followers, and it doesn't really matter to them, like 1,000 small numbers to them, but to me, that's a pretty substantial growth. And I've also been able to leverage that. So it's not just about having a lot of followers for me, it's also having kind of conversion rates. And what that means with my Instagram, since I'm not really selling stuff too much on my Instagram, I am getting teaching gigs and selling artwork and things like that, which is nice. I'm using it kind of like how I used the blog back in the day, where I was mostly known for my blog a while ago. And that was a way that I could kind of establish myself as an expert in the industry, even though I was still trying to figure things out, making things. Um, and it was pretty good. It's kind of the beginning of our store and kind of all the things that we've been doing. Lena says that she's been gardening. We have gypsy and Hungarian wax peppers, 3 kinds of tomatoes. All I remember is brown sugar, horseradish, and za'atar, mint. Oh, you've got quite a assortment. Maren says, I thought Zatar was an herb blend. I thought so too. Isn't it have sumac in it? Or it might be the type of radish, right? I don't know. They may have named that radish after the spice. Suzanne says, I really liked your protective heart eye hearts from yesterday. Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's I enjoyed making them. They were a lot of work and I'm still working on them. I'm gonna take a reel of some of the painted ones probably later today while the sun is still out. Um and yeah, so I'll show those off on my Instagram. That's Andrew Thornton Artist. And it's Thornton with Thornton. That's one of the things that people forget on my in my last name all the time, that extra N. Beading with Nicole said, yeah, once I become more focused and consistent in my beading on YouTube, my channel started growing more. I even did a few collabs with beading supply companies. Oh, good. Well, that's nice. Um, Teresa says, my Instagram is devoted to musicians who have passed on. Well, that's a good thing. Lena says, Marion, yes, it is, but it uses a certain type of time. So that was sold to us with that name. That's interesting. I try to get that sumac, not poison sumac. There's a plant called sumac, and it has these big kind of cone-shaped clusters of pinky red flowers, and it has kind of a sour kind of taste. It's kind of, you can put it in lemonade and kind of make a pink lemonade that way. Some people it makes their tongue itchy, so you have to be careful with that. But um, I think it's good. It's nice and kind of a fresher. Sometimes with like spices, if they're like it's just heat, I'm not super interested in. We were watching a show called Culinary Class War, and they talk about this one kind of sauce that they were doing, and I think they called it malo sauce. And what I realized is it's that sauce where they have the heat so strong that it makes your tongue go numb. And I am not interested in that. We got some ramen that had some of those sauce packets that were like that. And boy, did it burn like hellfire. And so, less than ideal. All right. So sometimes you'll have a piece where the hole seems kind of big. And what you have to do is you kind of have to like squeeze it and adjust it. And then it'll kind of sort that kind of that gap out. Um, and I kind of do that as I'm working anyway. And it's better if you don't tie those knots, but also those knots make it a little bit easier to do rows. So there's a give and a take with that. But so this is the circular brick stitch. Beading with Nicole. So that brick stitch pattern is really falling into place. I like it. Teresa says gardening too. I have 6 different types of tomatoes: Japanese cucumbers, spearmint, peppermint, basil, Greek oregano, cilantro, thyme, flatleaf parsley, and rosemary. I, for a brief second, thought that I was going to put a garden in this year. And then I was like, I'm going to be gone most of the summer. So I probably will not do a garden this year. Maybe next year. Marion says, one of our Lebanese grocery stores makes pita chips with za'atar. Yummy. Yeah, that sounds good. Usually we have it like sprinkled on the hummus. And yes. All right. So I'm going to finish up this last row. And then I'm going to show you how to tie it off. I'm not going to trim well, actually, I don't know. I guess I can show you. The reason why I'm hesitant is because I actually need the thread for the sculpture, because I sew these in. I don't, it's not glued on. I probably should just glue them on. It may be easier, but yeah, hopefully it works. And I can continue to can continue to sew them onto the form that I'm working with. I have to hurry up because the deadline is on June 15th, and that's in a few days, it feels like. So I gotta cook with the gas. I don't really know if I'm going to be able to finish in time or not, especially with the cats getting spayed this, but I'm gonna try. I have a backup plan. So if I start getting close to the deadline and I don't think that I can finish in time, I have a backup. So that's the way that I kind of work with some deadlines. Is if I am not sure if I'll finish or not, I usually try to have something as a backup plan, so that if I don't finish, then I can submit that instead. Marion said Sunday. Yes, coming up. And I have a meeting on Friday morning. So if you didn't hear Touchstone, we just bought a building. I'm on the board of Touchstone, so that's why I'm using we. It's not just like the royal we. Touchstone just purchased a building, or is in the process of purchasing a building in a nearby town called Ohiopyle, which is going to be used as a gallery space and kind of a make and take space that is going to be the gateway to main campus, which is a little bit further down the road, and kind of tucked behind. So on Friday, I have a meeting in the early morning time to check out the new space um, and look at it more closely. And this is what's everybody reading, listening to? I've got The Cold, Cold Ground by Adrian McKinty from the library. I'm listening to the new Molly Harper book. I just finished Two Turtle Doves, which is a memoir by Alex Monroe. And I also finished the new Alice Hoffman, which is only like an hour long, so it's not super long. And I started listening to a book called Fewer Less Things. And it's supposed to be about like craftsmanship and like having fewer less things, I guess. I don't know. I'm not really into it so far. So, but it is good to kind of be aware of those kind of conversations. It's in craft industry. So, I'm forcing myself to read it. So eventually I'll finish it. But it's not, so far, it's not like gripping my intrigue. But that could change. So who knows? Lorraine says, thank you, Andrew. I can't wait to try this. I have to go make dinner. Glad to hear your kitties are doing all right. So one thing I will say, if you're before you head off, when you finish the row, go underneath the thread bridge and do that half hitch knot, and then do it on the other side and do another half hitch knot, and then go in there and like this, you'll weave this tail. I left this long enough so that I can weave this in through my beadwork. And then when I get to the end, I can sew that in and do another half hitch knot. And you can use that. You can either string stuff onto it. You can put a bead on the end. If you have enough thread bridges, like say you go and reinforce your stitches, you can even put, if you have two or more threads in the thread bridge, you can actually put like a jump ring and use that to like hang it so you can make earrings really quick that way. Um, but you can also sew on a jump ring and use it as a pendant. You can also sew these together so that they form kind of like a chain of these shapes. You can also, because it's flexible, you can also form it into like a ring, maybe a smaller one, or like a bracelet. I'm going to use this on a sculpture. And the reason why I like brick stitch and the circular brick stitch is it conforms to rounded surfaces. Sometimes when you're working with sculpture, you're working with what are called anti-classic curves. And if you think about it like a Pringle, where you're going a curve down, but you're also going a curve up. And sometimes fitting shapes onto that is extremely difficult. So the nice thing about this is that it's because it's multi-directional in the way that it comes together, it can conform to some pretty kind of wild shapes and still kind of work. Some things they just won't work because if you try to force it, you'll either break the beads or break the thread. Um, Teresa says, we go to drumming class once a week, so thinking of buying drums to make or make our own. My daughter plays the flute at class as well as drumming. That's nice. I have a drum that I'm thinking of getting rid of. Um, and it's one of those steel kind of drums. So um, it sounds real nice, but I'm not really musical. Um, so Lena says, Marianne, that book sounds interesting. I have to scroll back to see what book. Marianne says, The Wolf Den by Elodie Harper. Oh, that sounds familiar. Elodie Harper. What else did she write? Because I feel like I've read stuff by her. Um, so yeah, so that's what we've been keeping busy with a reset. I doubt William will be back from his class because I started earlier by the time I finish. Um, so I don't know if you'll see his pottery today, but maybe tomorrow if he has anything to bring back. And so that got recommended from BookTube. Or got the recommendation from BookTube. That sounds good. I don't actually know what that is, but sounds good. Um, Marion says this one is set in Pompeii. Cool. I could see that. All right. So I'm just finishing up this row. Um, and I'm gonna hope that I have enough thread to sew it into the next pieces. If not, I can always add thread, but it's nice if you don't have to add thread. Adding thread does reinforce the stitches because you have to weave stuff in, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. So if I can do it in a one and done, that makes me happy. But I know sometimes you don't have a choice. It says she was a reporter in the UK, wrote about Boudica's daughter. And it's a literary YouTube. Oh, like book talk. I don't actually know what book talk is, but I see on Instagram people talk about it. And so that's how I watch TikTok is when it filters through to Instagram. And I always think it's pretty hilarious. There's this couple, and she's always trying to get her. I don't know if they're married or if they're just dating, but she's always trying to get him to do these things, um, like from some of those like sexy time books. And like there's like this hover that they do in the books where you kind of like lean in and kind of, I don't know. Um, and so she films that, but she doesn't like to be touched very much like that. So she busts out into nervous laughter. And I think they're like such a cute couple. So I end up watching these things and I was like, I don't know why I'm watching this, but it's pretty entertaining. I don't remember their names though. He's real tall and white, and she's kind of curvier, and black girl. And they met at a dance class. And all right, so I just finished off that row, so I'm going to go underneath this other one and do another half hitch. And if you're nervous, you can go and weave that in and do more knots. Since I need this thread as long as I can get it, I'm going to leave that. Lena says, when I'm running out of thread and have to add, especially with big beads, I feel like it's not sturdy. And if I knot it, it changes the tension and you can see it. If you do add thread, one thing that you can do, especially with big beads, is pull one side through when you add your knot. When you add your knot into it, so what I do is if I get a piece of thread, I create a slip knot. So if this is my thread, I wrap it around two fingers and then pull it up through there and create a slip knot like so. And then I slip this on top of the working thread. I hold this down and then I pull this until I hear it. You can hear a click. I'm not going to do it because I don't have to take out a knot. Um, but you do that and then you tie the short ends. But the cool thing about that is that if you do it right, what can happen is you can pull the knot down, and so the knot gets hidden inside of the bead as opposed to sitting on the top. So that's how you hide your knots. Marion says, yes, that's what it is. They review books, make up top 10 lists, etc. That sounds good. Susie's watching. She says hello. All right, so I'm going to run real quick downstairs and get another version of this so that you can see what that looks like. All right, so this is a version that I did of this project, and it's rainbow. And the reason why I use kind of a big thread for this, but it doesn't really matter because I have plans for this, and you actually won't see the thread when this is done. In theory, I don't know if my plan is going to work or not, but you'll have to stay tuned to see if it works or not. And then I didn't necessarily want to do just each color being a row. So I've been experimenting with this. So I'm working with more colors, and I'm working with a color from the previous row and then interspersing it with a color from the next row. And so in theory, this will have kind of a more blended kind of fade out into the colors. So this green will be next. And then I'll work my way through the rainbow. But I have to play around with this one a little bit more. But that way, not everything looks like a bullseye. Because sometimes you're like, what am I going to do with that bullseye? I have a reason why I'm making that. But for other people who may not want a bullseye time, that is, and this is what it looks like. The differences by using the different beads. So I would use a smaller thread. I used a 6 pound on that, and it was still a little bit heavy duty for that. So maybe a 4 pound, and you'll get a little bit smoother whenever you're working with your knots and stuff. But so it's a different look. This almost looks like micro mosaic to me in a way. And this is a little bit larger. But this also took probably it took longer. and I had to add thread many times to get this. This one, I did it one and done with a thread, and I need to make hundreds of these. So I can't dilly dally by adding like thousands. If I had more time, like if my deadline wasn't on Sunday, I might have tried to work smaller, just because it's kind of a little bit more impressive. But I think that working with the 5 O's is the way to go to reach my deadline. All right, so that's the demo, circular brick stitch. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. If you do end up making, oh, so here's the thing. I thought I was gonna be tricksy, and I was gonna do more than a wingspan. Not, not, not. So I have 3 knots, and that's because I was like, oh, I don't want to add thread. But now every time I try to put that thread through a bead, I'm reminded that I should have just added thread instead of trying to work with this long, unwieldy piece of thread. Suzanne says, thank you. And please do, if you make anything, be sure to tag us. We'd love to see. One thing that I love about this is that it's relatively easy and accessible, and you can really travel with it. It's a good travel project. Because you don't need to bring, half your studio. You can bring a little Tupperware of a couple, not even a Tupperware. You can bring a little container of beads and some thread and some needle, and have hours of entertainment. The other thing that I like about this is that it's kind of intuitively based, where you're kind of picking where to which thread bridge to use, and that is nice because it's not super prescribed. I kind of feel like with some of the stitches they're very regimented in what you have to do, otherwise it looks like super wonkadoodle. So this is nice because you don't really have to uh, focus super hard on making these. Some things you have to really kind of focus, and if you don't, then like the eyeball's out of whack and it looks weird. Or if you're working with certain bezels, beaded bezels, the stones can pop out. So I like where you don't have to think too hard, and it just kind of falls into place. So I'll stop singing the praises of the circular brick stitch and tell you all to have a good night. We'll be back tomorrow with another check-in or a demo or a tutorial or something. We're not doing live sales this week, so we're in the midst of our reset week. So our online store is closed, but if there is one of the Laura Lunsford pendants that you have been wanting, if it's in the D stash, if you go and claim that real fast, even though we technically closed it last night, we can probably squeeze you in. All right. Hope you all have a great night. See ya.